Welcome to How to Talk to Kids About Anything with Dr. Robyn Silverman, a podcast loaded with practical tips, powerful scripts, personal stories, and simple steps to make even the toughest conversations easier. So get ready to get the information you need to make the impact you want from someone you trust, your friend, parenting expert, Dr. Robyn Silverman.
Hello and welcome to How to Talk to Kids About Anything, where we give you the tips, scripts, stories, and steps to make even the toughest conversations easier. I'm so honored to be your host, Dr. Robyn Silverman, child and teen development specialist, author, and speaker, and most importantly, parent of two great kids who give me the opportunity to love, learn, and grow every single day, whether I want to or not. Believe me, I get it. It's not always easy, but we're in this together, and we have some great people helping us along the way. School shootings, traumatic weather events, local fires, acts of terror. When the world is struck with a catastrophic event, it's natural to want to shield our children from the effects of it. We want to keep their innocence intact, allowing them to grow up carefree and unfettered, feeling safe and calm wherever they go. We might wonder, if we just don't talk about it, could our children remain in their happy little bubble for the time being? The problem is we live in a world where children receive messages about traumatic events from many different avenues. It's not just the news that we can easily turn off, or even the 24/7 access to the internet that provides a play-by-play as negative stories develop. It's also that different families have different rules about such access, with multiple kids of various ages in their homes who are permitted to have more access. So that might mean that you send your blithely innocent child to school, ignorant of any scary event that might have occurred, only to have them bombarded with the news from a more informed, or maybe not accurately informed, child on the bus, or from a group of kids in a class. Knowing that something has happened, but not having anyone to explain it in age-appropriate terms and how it relates to our specific child can be frightening for anyone. We all need context, assurance, and our own concerns addressed by someone we trust. Our kids actually need information to feel safe. And as a parent or an educator or a coach who knows this child, you're the perfect person to have the conversation with them. I've talked about this on national TV shows. I've written it in the press. But I thought it was really important to talk about it on my podcast, especially through the lens of anxiety, as many kids have trouble dealing with such large-scale events. My next guest tells us that since you know your child best, it's important to manage the conversation, or shall we say tailor it, based on who they are, what they already know, and what it means for them. Karen Young has been on our podcast before, talking about anxiety. In fact, her podcast episode is in the top 5 most downloaded episodes of How to Talk to Kids About Anything of all time. She's back today to discuss with me how we can talk to kids about traumatic world events. Karen has worked as a psychologist in private practice and in educational settings. She founded the very popular website, Hey Sigmund, which attracts millions of readers each year. Karen is a sought-after speaker, both at home in Australia and internationally. She's the author of Hey Warrior, a book for kids to help them understand anxiety and find their brave. The book has now been translated into a number of languages. I want to welcome you, Karen, to How to Talk to Kids About Anything.
Hi, thank you for having me. This is such an important topic, and I'm really grateful to you for opening the conversation about it here. So I'm really pleased to be a part of it.
Well, thank you so much. We loved having you on the show talking about anxiety. You are such an incredible resource for parents and educators, and I knew really that you would be the perfect person to get on again and talk with us about how we can help kids through traumatic events, especially worldly events, global events, or even local events that are traumatic, and really have the right words to say and some good tips in our back pocket so that we know how to handle it. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. You know, with anxiety, our kids are just being exposed to so much now, and it's, you know, just reflecting on what you said about social media and the accessibility of information to them and the volume of information that they have access to now, which we didn't have access to anything like this amount of information so quickly and so readily, and so rawly sometimes. At least ours was often filtered, you know, through parents or through the 6 o'clock news, but what they can access on social media, if they're not accessing it directly, but the things they're getting from their peers is enormous.
Absolutely. So before we get into everything, for those who haven't yet heard you talk about anxiety or read your books, can you tell us how, as someone who is particularly focused on kids and anxiety, how you found these traumatic world events or national events collide with kids' anxiety? What have you seen and what have you heard that's helped you to take such an interest in this particular topic?
So one of the things to remember about anxiety is one of the things that can really flourish anxiety or trigger anxiety are memories. Now, the thing about the memories is they don't actually need to be an experience that the child has had themselves. So those memories, when you know the memories that are accessed, which give rise to anxiety or to that response, can be stories they hear, it can be something they hear from their friends at school, it can be in a movie, it can be on the news. So for sure, when they're accessing information about world trauma or traumatic events, they can get laid down as memories, which can become really accessible. And when those memories are accessed, so if there's if it's a weather event that they even hear about, they might not even have been anywhere in the area, but if they're hearing about it, that will get accessed whenever they're in a similar situation, or it can be anything. You don't even know. It can be when they're falling asleep at night, and that can be enough to start that anxiety response, that fight or flight response. So what we need to do as parents is start to give it a context, so those memories aren't delivered or aren't accessed as this raw information which has no context and no shape for them. And the less we put that context around it, the more those memories are going to be accessible in a way that can really be scary for them and can really ignite that anxiety.
I think you're hitting on something very important and something that we don't always give such credit to, that a child can read something in a book, a child could see something on a program, even if it's not actually a nonfiction program, a fiction program, and take that in as a memory, as you're saying, and then it becomes part of what they may call up that's bringing anxiety, and they may not even know why they're feeling so anxious. They may not even have connected it, but it becomes part of their brain and part of their memories, as you said. That's so interesting. I appreciate you bringing that up, because I think it's not something that we often say.
And the thing to remember too, with emotional memories, they lay themselves down as full experiences. So even hearing about, or seeing vision of something really frightening or really raw on TV, or hearing about it from their friends, that becomes an emotional experience. And when emotional experiences lay themselves down, they lay themselves down almost as sensory experiences, and they don't lay themselves down as words. So that's why if they hear about a school shooting, when they go to school, they can have these feelings accessed. The reason they won't consciously know what's going on is because it's not laid down as words. It's not like they don't access it in the way of, oh, that's right, this is because I saw it on the news, so I'm worried about it. They can't put those pieces together because they just know a feeling, because that experience, that emotional experience is accessed, and it's automatic and it's instinctive, and it happens for a good reason. If we put our hands on a hot stove, that lays itself down that the emotional experiences are powerful, and that's to drive us away from threat or from risk. So when it's all working as it should, it's perfect. But what can happen is it can drive us away from the wrong things if those memories or if that experience isn't processed. And it's why often, if kids are upset when they're being dropped at school, or if they're getting anxious about school, we can look at them and say, but there's nothing to be scared of. There's no problem there. That's because all they know is they might have had a passing thought about something happening to their parent while they're away from them, or they might have heard something about someone who was at school and, something happened and there was no one there to help them, and that can be enough. So it's not necessarily something they can articulate or that they're consciously aware of, because it all happens in the amygdala, which it's all on a neural level, which doesn't always come through to a conscious word level. They're just aware of the feelings. So they might not know why they're anxious, but they're a state of anxiety. They'll know why, where the threat is.
The amygdala knows why. Okay, so when that scary world event happens, and even if it is a world away, as you were saying, it can affect our kids right here at home. So how do different children react to catastrophic news, and how do you know when their feelings have gone from a more typical reaction to one that's falling into more of an anxiety range?
So that's a really good question. The clue is that something is a problem when it's causing problems. So if some kids might become withdrawn, some kids might actually put it into, I don't want to go to sleep in case there are monsters under my bed, or in case there are witches, or in case someone comes and steals me, or it can be put into something which sounds really irrational, but it's actually, when you dig down enough, the fear is very valid and it's very real. And it's about separation or something happening to them or someone they love. Should this event, it's all about being, under threat, feeling unsafe. Some kids might just talk about it a lot. Some kids might talk about it not at all. Some kids might be, on social media trying to do their own research and figure it out themselves. So what we need to do as parents, or the important adults in their lives who they trust, is actually just check in with them. So when there is a global event, it's very likely, unless they're really small and they don't have access to the new, maybe a 4-year-old who who doesn't see the news, or who, they don't have their own social media, obviously. But if it's 8, 9, 10, 11, when there's a potential that they might be going to school and talking about it and getting information, or it might be coming through their own feeds in social media, it's really important that we open the door for them to talk about it. And it can just be something as simple as, so what happened, I'm wondering how you feel, or if there's something that you would like to talk about it, I just want you to know that I'm here if you want to talk. How are you feeling about it all? Because it's a pretty scary thing to happen. They might not want to talk, and so we don't want to push them to talk if they don't want to. The idea is just to make it accessible for them. So and that still has to be on their terms. So if it's an older child or an adolescent, they're going to be turning more towards their peers and less likely to be talking to us. And so, the conversations for that are beside them in the car, or just asking them what the talk is at school, what people are saying, how they're feeling about it. Or something I think is really useful for older kids is just sitting beside them on the bed at night time. And we don't even have to raise it, but often that can be when they're feeling safe and connected to you and there's no more noise, that can be when they start to open up about it. So it's not even intentionally going in there to speak about it, but just, sitting down on the edge of the bed, asking about their day, asking how they're going, and just letting them know that you're always there for them. And that can create a really safe and just calm environment for them to access you.
Okay. So if a child, let's go through, I think it's good to go through a little bit of an age scripting. If a child comes to you and actually says that they heard about something on the news. Let's say it was a shooting or a terrorist event, or maybe they just did a drill at school, let's say, and they're asking,
yes,
if they're asking something like, can this really happen to us? In that moment, let's go with, I mean, look, it's even happening in elementary school that the kids are having these drills and they could hear about something. So let's start with maybe that the younger ages and then move into the middle school and high school ages after that. What would you say to your child in that moment?
So say for primary school children, the biggest thing to remember with all kids, and really whatever age they are, is the primary question in their mind will be, what about me? What does this mean for me? And the people I love, because that does translate to what about them. So for primary school kids, it's likely that they will know what happened, but what they want is they want that they'll be looking for what it all means for them. So are they safe? Are you safe? Could this happen to us? How do you know that? And you know, we can easily say things like, well, no, you know, you're okay. We're here. We're good. But they'll need the detail. And so we really need to attend to that so that they don't fill in the gaps themselves, only as much as they need to feel safe. So we don't want to, and it's really important not to avoid their questions or not to dismiss how they feel, because when we do that, it's not going to make those questions or feelings go away. It's just going to really, in a sense, make them, you know, more of a more intrusive for them. So what we need to do is look for, one way to help them feel safe is look for the differences between what has happened and their life. So if it was, say, a catastrophic weather event, do we live in places, and it might be flooding, which is something, you know, that's happening here at the moment. Do we live in a place where there are no cyclones, or there are no, you know, we don't have flooding here. It doesn't happen here, and it can happen. But every time something happens like this, there are people who look at it to understand what's happened and what needs to happen to make sure that we're safer from it in the future. So they need to understand that there's work happening behind the scenes even when this happens to look after them, and there are people who do this. If you can explain how their situation is different, then that's helpful as well, because what they do is they look at they'll look at something and they'll go, well, this could happen to me, and you know, these grown-ups were you know, hurt. Maybe you could be hurt, or you know, they might see a child crying, and what does that mean for me if something happens to you? So point out the differences. If you know, if you can do that, well, that happened. It's different here because of maybe we live in a different place, or you know, maybe it's different circumstances, or you know, whatever the differences are. And if you have trouble finding the differences, point out that there are people who, you know, who work on this to make sure that it you know, that they're going to be safe in the future.
A really important thing, and I know that here, you know, when there's been hurricanes or tornadoes, we do point out the differences, because we don't live typically in an area that's struck with that, because, you know, you're talking about something that might be flat, you know, more flat land and that kind of thing, things on the coast, on the bottom part of America for us. But when it comes to something like a school shooting, those differences start to be more, you know, more rare, because, okay, well, that was a community that, you know, looks very much like mine. The adults look like people I've seen. So in that case, just to put high beams on what you're saying, that it's important to then step back and say, every time that this type of thing happens, we learn, and the adults who are in charge, who are trying to keep everybody safe, learn what they can do to keep us safer. And there are many people who are working on this to make sure that we are safe. They're working on it when you are at school. They're working at it when you are out of school, when you're sleeping. They're working on it around the clock. And I think it is important to say that outright. I like that idea a lot.
The other thing is, too, they'll be looking to you for a sign as to whether or not they're safe. And kids do this, generally with anxiety, but especially for this. So one of the things to give them, because they might not feel safe, so we have to, in a sense, let them know that we feel safe enough for, both of us. And the conversation along the lines of, I wouldn't let you go to school if I didn't trust you were going to be okay. And I understand you're scared. This is scary and it scares me. So we need to catch their feeling. We need to validate it because they need to know that we get it and that we're not just dismissing them. And then the extra bit to move them, forward from where they are is, I feel really safe sending you to school. I promise I wouldn't do it if I wouldn't send you to school if I didn't feel safe about it, because I trust that they've learned things and that they've got this. So we, and that doesn't mean we feel completely safe about it, because it can happen. It can happen where we aren't in control of that, but we feel safe enough, because we wouldn't do it if we didn't feel safe.
Right.
Feel safe enough. So what we need to do is communicate that we trust that they're safe and that they're okay.
Excellent. And such good scripting. We appreciate that. So what about when the kids are a little bit older, that now they're out of primary school or elementary school and they've moved into their middle or secondary school, and they have more knowledge, more access to the internet, more discussions with friends, and you have noticed that they are showing what is abnormal behavior for them, that they are sleeping more or less, they're eating more or less, they're, seem to be up later or sleeping to all hours of the day. Something that is different. Now, what would you say to an older child in the situation where you can see that the news has bothered them?
So first of all, I'd name that. I would say, this is a big thing that's happened, and it's scary, and I feel scared by it. It shook me, and I wonder how you feel about it, because I'm noticing that you're doing, that you're not speaking as much, or that you are a little bit more teary, or that you're sleeping late, whatever it is that they're doing, name it. And then say, that's really understandable, because people, when they get a scare like this and something like this, even though we're not in it, is scary, because we can't help thinking, what if it happened to me, or what if it happened to us? That's really normal, and I get that, and I went through that when I heard about it. I'm wondering what's happening for you. And what we want to do is if we can, get them to talk, because when they talk, they start to give those feelings context, and they start to make important connections. What verbalizing does is it actually soothes that emotional side of the brain. So, if you imagine it, it's not discrete like this, but there's a feelings side, and then there's the language and logic side. When there's big feelings without the words, that's really scary. And it's why intuitively we know it's good to talk about stuff. So we'll just want to talk to our girlfriends. We're not looking for a solution. We just feel better when we talk about things, because we're actually putting word to that experience and giving it a shape and a context. And then it becomes more containable, those feelings, and we make the connections we need to. So even the act of talking about it is enough. So if you can, just put that invitation there. Now, we don't want to force them, because they might not even have the words for it yet. But the idea is to get them talking, and also to give them that, what they need in that moment is it's okay to feel like this. Because if they haven't talked about it, it's just a feeling which feels they might be feeling silly because there are actually people who have died, and here am I really safe and warm and tucked in bed, and I don't deserve to feel like this. This is crazy. This is silly. So what we need to do is validate that response and actually give them permission, in a sense, to feel whatever they feel, because whatever they feel is okay. And even that can be a relief. And it might take a couple of days. They might not want to talk about it straight away. But it's about just leading them there and answering really directly any questions they have, and even sharing a little bit of your experience about how you felt when you heard about it can also open the way for that. And then it's the same. Every time something like this happens, they learn from it, and I know it's really scary. I get that, but I feel, and then, letting them know that if it's a school shooting, say, this is really scary and people are going to be shaken by this for a while. I get that. I feel safe with you going to school, and I understand that might not make a difference to you, but I just want you to know that, because I wouldn't send you to school if I didn't believe you're going to be safe. And so we still have that same conversation, but the idea is to try and get them talking more.
You've been so good in our past podcast when we talked about anxiety with providing some actual exercises when children are really having some true anxiety about something. And in this case, we're talking about a particular event. Maybe one of their friends had a fire in their home, let's say, and they're ruminating about it. Now they're perseverating, they're ruminating. And what kinds of exercises might you do with a child or preteen or teen to help them cope with their feelings in a more healthy way if you see that they are stuck in that cycle that's keeping them in a really unhealthy state?
One of the things, and I actually think this is where the research around anxiety is going to, and rumination and negative thinking, locked in that cycle, is going to open up, is around gratitude. And that's because at the start I was talking about those memories which are really present for them. And that keeps the rumination going. That keeps it, because those memories are so accessible. And we know the brain does what the brain does most of. So the more they think those thoughts, the more accessible those thoughts become, the more they access those memories and images of what they felt like when they were told about the fire, or the image of that fire happening, the more accessible they get. What gratitude does is it actually replaces over time those negative memories with something which is less compatible with anxiety. So if they can get into a gratitude practice, which is 3 times, before bed, writing in a gratitude journal for what they're grateful for, even just putting just on a piece of paper or, sticky notes or whatever on their mirror, 3 things they're grateful for, or in a jar, a glass jar, so they can actually have a visual cue for the things that feel right in their lives and that they're grateful for, 3 things before bed. And what that's doing is that's, creating starting to create a pathway to memories and images which aren't this anxious, negative thinking. And that can take time, but it's a really important practice to get into. One of the other things that's important is, and this is probably more long-term, mindfulness and exercise are really important they've found that for people who get stuck in negative cycles, they have less of a chemical called GABA in the memory centers of the brain. And one of the ways that's the short name for it. So they're less able to stop negative thinking. So probably this is something that's really important for kids who typically get stuck in that negative thinking cycle. One of the ways to make sure GABA's at the right levels is exercise, activity, moving. So we really need to make sure that our kids are playing and doing fun things and moving. And that can be really hard, especially if they're bigger kids and they have a study, they've got to go to school early for, band practice or whatever, and then all day they're exhausted. But we're looking at strengthening from the inside out. So this is one of the ways to protect the brain, so that when these things happen, they're less likely to get stuck in that cycle. And these are all long-term things. Short-term gratitude, writing down 3 things they're grateful for, but long-term mindfulness and exercise are really important things for all kids to give them what they need to be able to not enter into this negative thinking cycle and be really eaten up by it.
I really like that. It's such an easy thing to do, and it's something that, no matter what the event is, and no matter where you are, you can do this for yourself, and it helps to bring peace to your body and to your mind. I had a conversation with my daughter the other day, because she's been, having some anxiety around certain things. And I told her I wanted, when she was at school, I wanted her to look for 3 ways she could be kind to other people, just to get her out of looking for anything negative. Just 3 ways you can be kind to other people, because I feel like if you get out of thinking just of what's happening to me or how am I feeling and looking outward at some other people, that might be helpful. So I'm wondering, how can children maybe do something active after a disaster, after a tragedy, after some kind of catastrophic event that can help them feel better, maybe even make a difference to a community? Is there something that they can do to be a part of a solution in maybe even a small way?
Yeah. So whenever a disaster like this happens, there's always, places or ways to be charitable towards that and to give back. We just had it here because the drought has really caused so much breakage for farmers, and they're really devastated, and families are really struggling. And it happened, with my kids, we were having a talk about it, and they're older. And so one of the ways that, and it's that feeling of helplessness, which can also lead to guilt in a way, like, why are we so lucky and they're in so much pain? It just, so one of the things is, well, we are really lucky, and so how can we make a difference? And so what they did was they donated money to there are always different, whether it's the Red Cross or they had there were lots of different ones, Fibre for a Farmer and all sorts of ones. So they donated money for little kids. They can, do a job, and that money, and they can see where that money's going and how it's helping, whether it's the Red Cross or whether it's to, for school shootings. There would be something there that would
maybe make cards. They made teddy bears. I remember there was a lot of drawing pictures and sort of sharing their love in a way that they can. Yeah, it's
really just a way to get it out of them and to feel like they are making a difference. So to get that out of them and to kind of that sense that they're making a difference.
Right.
To them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's important for them to feel like they can do something, even in some kind of small way. When there was a fire in town, one of the kids who was in my daughter's class, it was his family's house, And, of course, a lot of people rallied in the class and in the school. My son decided that year, and we do different things for charity on birthdays, but he decided for his birthday that he was going to be collecting things for that particular family, so that he could, donate something that would be helpful to them. So we got their toy lists and their, what did they want that was going to be helpful to them. So there are these small ways to say, we can be helpful even though we're small. I mean, he might have been 5 at the time. And instead of focusing then on the fire or the tragedy that happened, we're focusing on what can maybe make a little bit of a difference to ease the pain or the burden of the family or the families that are being challenged by it.
And I think that's important, because I think the other thing that they need to know is when something like this happens, the world really comes together, or the community comes together. So people don't go through this on their own, because we rally. And we, it's like we kind of join arms and hold people through as much as we can. And so they need to see that as well, that it does, people look after people. So, and this is, especially when something bad happens, and it's hard to explain how some people do bad things, but there's more people who do good things, and there's kindness, and we do come together and we do look after each other, because they might not see that. So when it's, especially if it's a little one, and they'll hear about the tragedy, but they won't hear necessarily about the response and how people are coming together, and how, there's an outpouring of love and support for people. So we need to balance it up by letting them know about that as well as letting them, take part in it if they can.
Is there ever a time when you would say that it kind of moves into you need to get some outside help? I mean, is there, there's so many things that we can do as parents or as educators to help comfort the children, but is there ever a time when you would say, it's now the anxiety is at a level that is truly unhealthy, and we've got to reach out for some assistance from our family doctor or from a local therapist?
For sure. And I think it's when it is really intruding into their day-to-day life. So when, if there's been a time period and things aren't getting better, and they're refusing to go to school, or they're just not sleeping at all, when it gets, or they don't want to go, they don't want to, these might have been kids who were happy to do things on the weekend with their friends, but they don't want to leave a parent's side. That's when it really intrudes, and when it's beyond, when you've tried everything you can try. And sometimes kids, families just need that extra support. We all need a hand sometimes beyond, what's in front of us, and that's okay. And so I suppose one of the things is we need to kind of, it's okay to do that. It doesn't mean the child is broken. It doesn't mean, that it's a helpless situation by any means. It just means it needs that extra. The situation just needs, or the child needs that extra support. So when it's at a stage where it's really intruding into day-to-day life, I think that's when and you've done everything you can, that's when it's time to get help. And sometimes it might just be a couple of sessions, just it might just need that extra person helping reframe or a different way to think about things.
Right. And especially if you're talking about a parent, sometimes just being the parent, you're so involved, you're so interlocked, and you can't be quite as objective. So having an outside person can just help to move the process along with some objectivity. And as you said, some maybe some different techniques that might work better for your child. And we're just so tied in emotionally that sometimes we're so affected by it too, because we want our child to be happy and well again, that we just can't get the perspective of the calm, good activities or helping what's going to help them get out of it. We're too involved.
And parents are incredibly powerful, because they have the connection and they know their child. So it's not even about that. It's just having sometimes that like your child might need another perspective. One of the things I get a lot from teens is, I thought I was really weird, or I thought I was broken. Isn't the way isn't the word they use, but they use a word like, I thought I was there was something wrong with me. And one of the things that's really important for them to hear is, I hear this from lots of kids your age. You would be really surprised, and even that can dilute the anxiety, because the thing about anxiety is it grows and it feeds itself. So it starts with anxiety about, what if this happens to me? And then it grows into, I'm so weird, there's something wrong with me because I just can't stop thinking this. And so even here, this happens to so many people, and it's okay. Whereas if mum or dad says that, sometimes the kid can say, or that child can say, or teen can say, well, of course you're going to say that, you're my mum.
Exactly.
But how would you know? And so sometimes they just need that other perspective, whether it's a school counsellor or a therapist, to say, I see lots of kids, I hear this from lots of kids your age, and they're actually really amazing, intelligent, strong, brave kids. There's nothing wrong, there's nothing broken about that. It's really understandable. Here's what we need to do. So it's kind of opening the way to that, which can be helpful as well.
Exactly. I'm imagining it. Sometimes it's like you find out that the therapist or the guidance counselor has said almost the exact same thing as you have, and somehow the child heard it. They got it when somebody else said it. So it is an important thing to do, and reach out for help. And it is, as you said, completely fine. And a lot of people do it, and you deserve the help you need. So go ahead and get it.
So with my own kids, sometimes I'll be saying, it's the same line that I've been saying for 5 years, but they'll hear it from someone else's mum, and they'll come home and it's like it's big news. And I just, you just have to go, right, that's really wise. Yes. I wish I thought of that.
Oh, maybe they were quoting me from one of my articles. That's so interesting. Yes, no, that's awesome. And you as somebody who specializes in anxiety, that must be really funny to hear. I love that. Why don't you give us your top tip? What is the top message that you would want parents and educators or coaches to come away with about how to talk to kids about traumatic events, understanding that it can bring up a lot of anxiety?
Probably what I would say is, don't worry about saying the wrong thing. So I think one of the things that can hold people back from talking about it is, what if I say the wrong thing? You won't break them by saying the wrong thing. And I mean, really, it's better to have the conversation and to open the conversation up, because once the words are there and once the conversation's happening, even if something you say doesn't land the way that you thought it would, you can clean that up. Yes. When there's a conversation there. When it does damage is not having the conversation, because they're putting their own endings on it, and they're accessing those memories and those images over and over and over without context. So what I would say is, have the conversation. And if it's a teenager, they might roll their eyes and push you away. That's okay. That's all right. The main thing is that it will still land on them that you're there, and if they want to talk about it, they can. The other thing probably I would say is to really normalize their experience of it. So I get it. This is scary. I felt like this when I heard about it. I really understand it, because so that those fears don't grow into fears about being different or damaged, because I think it must be going to happen. And I think probably actually that's another thing to include in the dialogue is, with kids, there can be a feeling of, if I feel like something bad is going to happen, or if I think something bad is going to happen, it probably means something bad will happen. So we can short circuit that by saying, when I heard about it, I couldn't stop thinking about it either. And that's okay. That's just a way that you try and protect yourselves, because we try and protect ourselves, because when we're thinking about it, it's almost like your brain's on guard to be ready to respond to it. It doesn't mean something's going to happen. It's just your brain saying, did you hear about this? And what if this happens to us? What if it happens? And then you go into the conversation about, that we've talked about. Mm-hmm. So sharing with them our experience of it can be really important, and normalizing that conversation so that they don't put their own ending on it, which is, well, if I feel like there's something bad must be going to happen.
So I love what you're saying. Of course, we're all about, doing it again here, because and all about having the conversation. So I just appreciate you, shining a flashlight on that and saying, really, we've got to have the conversation. Yes, it may be uncomfortable. Yes, we may not get it right the first time, but that we are opening up the conversation so that the door remains open, and our kids understand that we are there as a resource. We are there for comfort. Mm-hmm. We're there to be a sounding board, and it's okay. It's okay that talking about it is actually a healing process, not an instigator of the actual event happening to them.
That's right. And the thing is, I think sometimes there's a fear that if I talk to them about it, it might make them think it more.
Yes.
If they're thinking it, they're thinking it. We won't make it worse. In fact, talking is a healing process in itself, because it gives word to the feelings. Mm-hmm. If it's not bothering them, just saying to them, you're okay with it? I just wanted to check in that you're okay with it. It's not going to make them think it more if they're not already in the cycle. So there are no wrong conversations to have, as long as it's, normalizing it and validating them and catching how they feel. We don't even need to have the words when we go in there, just opening it up, and the words will come. They'll ask the questions, or they'll have the responses. And even just hearing from us, I get it. I really get it. I felt like that too, can be really healing. So it's not like we need to have any magic solutions for it, but just having that sense of helping them feel felt can be really healing.
Love that. I think that's a great way of putting it. Give us your resource of the week. Where can people go to get more information about you and all the wonderful resources that you provide?
So everything is on my website, heysigmund.com, and there's loads of articles there about there is an article about talking to kids about world trauma, but there's loads of articles with the dialogue about how to talk to kids about anxiety. Yes. And really, if this is hurting them, if something has happened and it's hurting them, it's anxiety. It's a fear of what if something happens to you? What if something happens to me? And it's just having that conversation. So if you go to my website, the Kids and Anxiety, there's a drop-down heading, and the conversations are there. The information is there.
It's a great website and so useful for anybody who has a child who is experiencing anxiety, and in all different ways. So I just want to thank you for being on the show today, for providing all the information that you do, for working in this area, and really being such a comfort to parents and to educators and to coaches, so that they feel that they have the tools, they have the resources to talk to kids about anxiety, and especially in this case, traumatic events that they may experience or may have heard about. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you for everything you're doing to have the conversations and to open up the conversations, because it's hard. These are hard conversations to have. And, there's not we don't always necessarily have word for word scripts, because sometimes our kids will add things into the conversation that can be challenging for us, or we don't know how to respond to. But the most important thing is having the conversation. So thank you for doing everything you're doing to do that and to make the conversations happen.
Thank you so much for saying that. I feel honored, and I feel very blessed and lucky that I get to do the work that I do and talk to educators and experts like you. My friends out there, I've got my takeaways, and I bet you have yours. Let's discuss them. Let's come up on Facebook. We can go to the Dr. Robyn Silverman page. We can chat about it at drrobynsilverman.com or twitter.com/Dr. Robyn. I'm also on Instagram at Dr. Robyn Silverman. And I'll tell you, Karen Young is all over the place too, and I'll be linking to her. We're going to go back and forth. And as you know, I develop memes. There's so many things that Karen Young said today that I think are quotable and that are important for us to remember, that we, have to make sure that we're having the conversations, that we help our children to feel felt, and loads more. So make sure you stay tuned to all those memes and share them. And if you loved the podcast like I did, I hope you'll go up to iTunes and rate and review it so other people can get these outstanding solutions. Unfortunately, this is a conversation we absolutely have to have, and it's going to come up multiple times. So please feel free to share the podcast so that people can hear these solutions and use them in their own homes. That's all the time we have for today, my fellow parents, leaders, and educators. Thank you so much for tuning in to How to Talk to Kids About Anything. For more information on books, articles, speaking engagements, or curriculum, please visit drrobynsilverman.com. So many great podcasts up there, and the show notes to this podcast will be up there as well. I look forward to weathering the storms and enjoying the sunny side of life together. And please remember, even on the days when you fall short, you've got this. You're here, you're getting the information you need. I know it's not easy, but never forget there's always tomorrow. Parenting is the ultimate do-over. Just like we were saying on this podcast, when you have the conversation, even if it lands wrong, even if you don't say it quite as you wish, even if you think at night or the next day, I wish I did it differently. So do it differently. You can have the conversation again. You can say to your child, what I should have said was this, or what I meant to say was that, or did this come across right? You can do it again. I see you. I'm right there with you. And as there are moments when we doubt our know-how, our choices, and our sweet sanity, please know you are 10 times the parent you think you are. Until next time, this is Dr. Robyn Silverman with How to Talk to Kids About Anything. Please tune in again and keep connecting through conversation. See you next week.
You've been listening to How to Talk to Kids About Anything with Dr. Robyn Silverman. For more information on books, articles, speaking engagements, or curriculum, please visit drrobynsilverman.com.